Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, I literally just finished a session with the kids at the library today. This is session number 4, and this was a tough session in terms of getting party consensus. Uh, and we had left off the last time where they were fighting hobgoblins on the deck, and they literally just had a couple left to kill, so to speak. They had done very well at taking the ship back over, and the hobgoblins and the goblins they had under deck, under the deck as prisoners, burst out, and they think they're going to help their friends, and they realize that it's not just these workmen that the hobgoblins have come to try to take the ship back over from, but in fact the party has come back to the rescue. So they realize, oh, this really stinks. So there was a bit of a discussion. They handily beat the hobgoblins pretty fast, and the other ones surrendered. And at that point, they kept the little goblin guy, Snirk. I kind of hoped they would, but it really didn't matter either way. They really kind of had this back and forth, what do we do with this guy? But they want to keep him as a prisoner and for information. So they kept Snirk alive. They kept this guy, other hobgoblin Melk, which they just kind of put in prison for, I'm not really sure why, on the shore. At that point, I decided to do time passes. And it took a little while to really kind of get all the actions that they wanted to do, which were really small things for the most part. It was one of those things where I had to convince them that it was okay to move on, but nothing that they were going to try to do was really that important, either to them or to what was going on at that point. And so we finally had the time passes. And we go 2 weeks into the future, where pretty much you've spent all the money you have fixing this ship, hiring a crew, getting ready to go to which island. And my intention with this is really to do a little bit of Sinbad, a little bit of Redshirt syndrome, because during our session 0, one of the things that the kids said was they wanted to have people help them do stuff. They didn't want to just be the only ones involved in these fights and what have you. And during the beginning of the beginning adventures, nobody in the town really wanted to help them, and that made a lot of sense. But at this point, I figured, well, this is going to be kind of fun. They've also shown their proclivity to being a little violent. I'm trying to, not encourage anything, but I remember what it was like when we played when we were younger. So I'm letting them have a little bit of fun. But I figured, well, let's bring a crew aboard. So I wasn't really sure exactly how many people fit in this boat, and it really doesn't matter how many people fit in the boat. I certainly had a lot of hobgoblins on there. So I had about 20 some odd people go with them. I figured, you're not going to be able to sail the ship. Other people need to sail the ship. They decided to bring little Snirk the goblin and Melk the hobgoblin along as prisoners. And there was a discussion about that. There was a lot of back and forth trying to come to consensus. And I'm not sure how much of this is, we're also dealing with siblings, where I've got, an older brother and a sister, a middle sister, and then a younger brother. And there was definitely some sibling rivalry going. I could see from time to time. A little bit less between the other two brothers that sit on the bench together, and what have you. And we had the other guy that was present, the other kid, the oldest one. And he was present. I think he was present for one round of a combat, and then just kind of disappeared. He was there the whole time, or his screen was on the whole time, but he really didn't participate in anything. So I'm not really sure exactly where he went or what he decided to go do instead, or whether it was just bothering him that it took a little while to get to consensus or for things to get going. I'm not sure. Anyhow, so we finally got him all aboard the ship, and my intention was really to have a little bit of Sinbad, fun with him, where when various creatures that I've kind of decided are going to be on this island and the things they might encounter show up, there's a good chance that some of the Redshirts are going to die. And in fact, it's kind of they're going to be a bit of a buffer. They're going to be a bit of meat shields. They've already said that they don't want their characters to die, so I figured, well, this ought to be a little bit of fun. I remember all these Sinbad movies I used to watch where Sinbad lives, but various things kind of happen to his companions, and so we have them entering the waters around which island. And at some point I describe what they look like, and as they come closer and closer and closer, and the young lady actually had one of her friends with her, and her friends go, "That's pterodactyls, those are pterodactyls." And sure enough, they were pterodactyls. They came and attacked, and grabbed a couple of crewmen right off the ship, which was total fiat. Didn't make any attack rolls, had them grab the guy out of the crow's nest. And so hilarity ensues. What happened next, I did not expect. It was pretty interesting. There's a bit of a fight with some of the pterodactyls. The crew's freaking out. The one kid playing the cleric is shooting arrows, trying to save people, and manages to save one guy. He shot the pterodactyl, and I figured, or pterodon, I think they were. Actually, it was something not out of the monster manual, but something else I found online. excuse me, bigger pterodactyl, something that can actually pick somebody up. First one he shoots, the guy falls into the ocean, great, and then it's the pterodon's turn. I figure what's going to try to get its prize back again. This time it doesn't pick him up with its feet. It actually goes with the bill, rolls a 20, does all kinds of damage to this guy, kills him in the water. It's like Jaws. And it's the other one, and this guy falls in the water, never gets killed at that point. But another person on the deck ends up getting killed by a diving pterodactyl. There's some combat that goes on, but it was really interesting what they wanted to do. One of the players wanted to see if he could do some animal handling and wave a big fish at this pterodactyl. Do we have fish or fresh meat? I'm like, yeah, sure, you got fish. So all of a sudden it's like Pinocchio with this big giant fish on the deck. And he's trying to get, here boy, come on, get this. And I figure it's going to be this ridiculous animal handling roll to get this thing to like actually do it. So I think I made like a DC 20 or something. And the kid rolls a 7. So the thing tries to bite his hand off and does not. But, while he gets the fish. The other guy with him decides, I'm going to start tying ropes to these arrows and start to shoot the arrows and try to like get it over this, trap the pterodon that way. And I figured at that point, well, I'll treat it like a grapple. And the thing slipped out of the first rope. Didn't slip out of the second one. And now crewmen start to like go over and try to help, and they're doing terrible. They're getting horrible rolls. And finally, the young man playing the druid wild shapes into a bear. He tears one pterodactyl apart, like literally in one round, just kills it, and then helps his friends by going over and kind of wrestling this other one to the ground. It's already got a couple of ropes on it and holding it still. And I figure at that point we'll call that a successful grapple, and you've captured this thing. The young lady playing the ranger, one of the rangers, she decides she wants to cast Animal Friendship on this other one. She casts it. It works. The thing, she's got a save DC of 9. She's just not very good at casting spells. She did. It won. She won, and she manages to capture this thing. She wanted to see if she could get on its back, and I had to roll the animal handling roll. I think I made it like DC 15. It did not work. The thing gets nervous, and so she immediately stops. And so she's got this charmed pterodactyl. So they've got these two pterodons now. One is kind of tied up. She tries to charm this one as well. It rolls a 15. It's not having it. Didn't think they were going to try to capture these things. And didn't think it was going to succeed. They got 2 of them. Unfortunately, there was a lot of back and forth between the older brother and the younger. The one was very, very adamant that he did not want these things on the ship. He did not want them endangering his ship and endangering the crew. And they're having the argument out of character, but I could see kind of like the argument in character. Although the young lady was definitely saying, "Well, he's just trying to be mean to me," and so I finally brought it down to a vote. I think it was some other thing I brought to a vote, and he wasn't happy. The vote didn't go his way, but they decided to keep these things on the ship with a few crew members and keep them someplace where they could be, held, because the charm is going to wear off after 24 hours. She's going to have to recharm it or try to recharm it, do the more animal friendship. Well, at this point, they have captured 2 pterodons. Interesting. I didn't think that was going to happen, but that's what happens. And so in the meantime, they go to shore. The most keen-eyed of them, Brorn, I think it's one of the Drow Rangers, rogues, actually sees that there are something looking out of the jungle. I have a tribe of bullywugs there, and these little evil frogmen. And nobody else can really kind of see these things. And there's like a mangrove swamp, and there's a reef that prevents anything but the dinghies from getting there. And interesting thing happens. Once they get there, once they have the crew assemble all the stuff and and whatnot, and there's already a little bit of tension between the group. We got there, it took longer to get there, and I really hoped it would, but it is what it is. And they decide at this point, I want to go scout in this direction. I want to go scout in that direction. So our dwarf cleric, who did not want these things on his ship, goes in one direction with his younger brother, the druid. And they encounter the bullywugs at one point. And they take 3 crewmen with them. Smart. They take some Redshirts. They're surrounded by the bullywugs. And one of them, I decide, can talk to them, knows a bit of common, and croaks. And he wants to take them to their village, and you come with us. And he does an insight check on this thing and realizes the thing isn't lying to him. We're going to take you to your village. We're not going to eat you. And these bullywugs definitely want something from them. I set them up there as kind of like a cowardly tribe of bullywugs who definitely would like to enslave them or eat them or whatever. But I mentioned that some of them were wearing gold baubles. And in fact, as I'm describing Witch Island, you can see the volcano in the background through the mist and the mountains. And you can see ruins what might be hundreds or thousands of years old, covered with vines and all that kind of stuff. You can just barely see in the distance. So they must be huge. They are. These baubles come from there. And the bullywugs would like more of them, especially their leader. They're going to meet, pretty much what announced to Boss Nass. And he's going to want them to go there and get some more baubles, but he's not going to say that. He's going, we're going to help you, and you can help us, and something like that. And they'll agree to send them there a little bit. The bullywugs are also very afraid of a sea hag that lives in the area. That one of the other members of the party have kind of walked in that direction. But before that, I looked at what I had on the list of things, and so our Drow Ranger has actually encountered all by his lonesome a pseudo dragon. And he does this incredible stealth roll. He sees it, it sees him, he manages to sneak up behind it. And I figured, well, this ought to be kind of cool. And of course he asks, what's your name? And the only name I can come up with is Tu, which is the TOUS, which is the pseudo dragon from the actual Saltmarsh module, which I actually played in the thing I played in Dragon's Foot years ago in the play-by-post game. We actually had that pseudo dragon as a pal. So at this point, they're having a psychic conversation. Back and forth. So I figured that's kind of interesting. Let's see what happens with this little pseudo dragon. Does he help the party? Do they become friends? Because he was kind of interested in taming a pterodon. Now they got this little pseudo dragon. So we'll see what happens with all that. So that's two groups, and the other group, Reiner the Dragonborn. What is he? Dragonborn Ranger, and actually the two Rangers go in the other direction. And our Elven Ranger, they go in another direction. And what do they encounter? They encounter an Ankheg, which spits at them, and they both manage to save, and they both just taken 6 points of acid damage, but they're all by themselves. And each one of these groups, and at this point, it's kind of funny, because as this thing is they can see the kind of burrow that may almost looks like a mole, and the head's going out. The young lady is going, we shouldn't have split the party, we shouldn't have split up, we shouldn't have split up. And of course I'm laughing, and I'm not going to kill them. But their life has just become very, very difficult. And besides that, they've got, how many people do they have on the shore? About 15 other guys. Will these 15 other guys be safe? Will the sea hag try to eat a couple of them while the rest of the party is going in 3 different directions? Probably. So we'll see what happens next week. But, I'm going to have to figure out, the voting seems to work, but I'm going to definitely have to kind of get the voting to happen earlier. There's definitely some disagreements back and forth, and I'm going to have to figure out how to wrangle that a little bit more. I mean, it's funny, though. They disagree very much like adults disagree, except they're a little bit saltier about it, and they don't back down as fast as adults do. So I'll have to see what happens with that and see, how much of that people wrangling or kid wrangling I'm going to be able to do, which is a little more difficult via Zoom. And I've been able to kind of steer them back towards okay, hey, we have to make a vote on this, and there's a couple times they want to say, well, I want to do this with a pterodon that's not, it's back in the boat right now. So in the meantime, there's a little, it's odd. There's a little bit more adulting or adult guidance I have to do in the game than I'm used to. And so that's something I'm still kind of navigating as I'm playing. I'm definitely having fun, and I'm glad we got to Witch Island, because this is definitely a place that they could probably adventure for a good long time if they want to, because it's a very strange and very odd place. But I wouldn't have expected them to try to tame these pterodons, and I'm interested to see what happens with that. And I wouldn't have expected them to split the party into 3 parts, 4 if you count all the other guys, all the Redshirts. Most of the Redshirts they left behind, which is fine too, because then they can find, what happened to Bob and Phil and all these guys. But we'll see what happens next week. Take it easy, kids.